Well, Razorback fans, you are officially going dancing in the NCAA Tournament against Kansas and Providence. So let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Neighbors. I am also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Hope everybody's having a wonderful start to the week, as it is official. The Arkansas Razorbacks will be taking on Kansas in the NCAA tournament in the first round. They are a 10 seed in the West region, and they will be facing Kansas, who is a 7 seed. That game will be played on Thursday, March 20th, and it will be at the Amica Mutual Pavilion, I believe is how you say it, in Providence, Rhode Island, and it'll be at 6:10 Central Time on CBS. So yeah, there you have it. I knew Arkansas was getting into the NCAA tournament. I think everybody knew that. And it got a little dicey there on the selection show because it kept going and going and going. And Arkansas was one of the last teams to actually get their number called. But this is how it's set. And they will be in the... Here's what's crazy. So they will be facing, if they were to beat Kansas, which is going to be a tough task, because I think Kansas opened up as a 5.5-point favorite. If Arkansas was to beat Kansas, more than likely they will be facing St. John's up in Providence, the 2 seed, who's really good because Rick Pitino's a really good coach, and that is going to have some true fireworks of Cal and Pitino, who both former Kentucky coaches, and both were bitter rivals when, of course, you had Cal at Kentucky and then Pitino at Louisville, and now they're at 2 completely different schools and potentially could go up and face each other. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see that. But you got to take care of business in game 1 against Kansas. Now, this is an interesting fact about Kansas, in my opinion, and with Arkansas in this matchup. Bill Self, Hall of Fame coach, multiple national championship winner, multiple Final Fours. Arkansas, of course, historically, where they've been, these two teams faced each other just a couple years ago when Arkansas knocked them out of the second round of the NCAA tournament to go on into Sweet 16 in Vegas. So you had that. But overall, it's a new position for both of these coaches to be in. Bill Self is not used to, at Kansas, being a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament and being forced to go to Providence, Rhode Island. And Cal, even in its first year at Arkansas, is not used to being a 10 seed in the NCAA tournament. Barely getting in, and also having to go to a place like Providence, Rhode Island. Both teams have been disappointing, to say the least. Both teams were highly ranked at the beginning of the year, and both teams have not had the seasons that either team has wanted. And that's what makes this so fascinating, is because there's a lot of similarities between the two teams. They played each other in that exhibition game in Bud Walton Arena to start the season months ago, and it didn't matter. Arkansas won that game. But it's an exhibition. Some of the key players didn't play for either team. Completely different places right now. But still, there's at least some familiarity. There's some respect there. And I think with both Bill Self and John Calipari, they've faced off against each other quite a few times. So the familiarity and the style and philosophy and everything is definitely there. Kansas went 11-9 in the Big 12. 11-9. They most recently lost to Arizona when they played them twice once in the Big 12 tournament, but the other time in the regular season, which they won that game. They lost to Houston on the road by 6. They lost to Texas Tech, who's a really good team, by 5 before that. But then you started seeing weird stuff, like when them getting beat by BYU by 30-plus points. That was weird. I remember that game. It was very strange. Seeing them lose to Kansas State the way they did was strange. Seeing how, I think it was which other game that they ended up losing earlier in the year. I feel like there was another one in there. I know they lost to Missouri and Creighton, but this point is that like the teams that they lost to for the most part in the Big 12 were really good teams. It wasn't like they had just a ton of bad losses. They lost to Utah also, which wasn't great, but They had losses to Houston. They lost to them twice. They lost to Iowa State. Got beat pretty handedly by them. They lost to Baylor. Lost to West Virginia, which West Virginia did not get into the tournament. It was wild. Just random side note. Saw that in almost everybody's projections, that everybody who does projections had West Virginia in them. Every single one of them had them in the tournament, and they didn't get in. North Carolina did, which is a travesty. But still, that's your matchup for the Razorbacks. You got a little intrigue for many reasons. We'll talk about one of the biggest one here in just a second in the next segment. But for Arkansas, this is just about, hey, you got in. You did your job. You got into the NCAA tournament. Personally, I wasn't too thrilled in the fact that they're going to Providence. I am going to be there. All of us at Inside Arkansas are going to be there in Providence. We fly out actually Tuesday morning. So prayers up, and don't worry, I will make sure that I carry on all my equipment. But we'll be there, and we're going to cover it. And we're going to be there hopefully for the entirety of the week and discussing it, covering it, all that good stuff. That's the hope again. So we'll have all and I'll be, of course, doing Locked On from there live as well. But that was really disappointing that it had to be Providence. Of all the places to go, that was not the one that I really wanted to be at. And it's nothing against Defiant City. It's just with all the other options and how much more expensive it is up there. There's other places we were going to drive to. If it was Wichita or Milwaukee or even Lexington again, we were going to end up driving and making that happen. But obviously that's not the case. So I was a little disappointed in the location. And also what really sucks eggs is the fact that if Arkansas found a way, somehow, some way, to advance to the Sweet 16, it'd be a long shot. But if they decided to play their best basketball and take care of business, then they would have the Sweet 16 game where? In San Francisco again. So it's almost completely and totally perfect for what it was a few years ago when Arkansas had to play in Buffalo, and then they had to go to San Francisco. Granted, they went to the Elite Eight, and it was great. But man, it's a lot. It's a lot to travel that way. It's a lot to make that haul. And so I feel for Razorback fans mainly because that's not easy. Like Providence is not an easy place to get to, plain and simple. But they're gonna get there. They're gonna have some players that hopefully are healthier now, and I know they'll have at least one more, which again we'll talk about. But here's the deal: matchups. You talk about matchups. Talk about the draw that a team gets. You talk about, is this a favorable draw? Whatever. I know that we can sit here and talk about the analytics and talk about the numbers and talk about, what has Kansas done and some of their best players and how they match up with the bigs and also the guards and the perimeter shooting and da-da-da-da-da. We can sit there and we can talk about that, and it's 100% valid and justified to discuss that when talking about an opponent. But if anybody has learned anything about the NCAA tournament is that it is a crap shoot. It's a crapshoot, man. We have no idea what's going to happen. Like, would anybody be shocked if Arkansas beat Kansas? I wouldn't be. Would anybody be shocked if Arkansas lost to Kansas? I wouldn't be. It's just so crazy, and that's what makes it so fun. But it's so crazy where if you play one bad game, you could be a better team, a much better team than the opponent that you're going to be facing up against. More talent, better coach, all of that. But if you have just one bad game, it ends up being a major problem. And you end up losing those games. And on the other side of it, the other team may have their best game of the season. Maybe blowing up, maybe just going out there and dominating and not missing a shot. Maybe they're hitting all their threes, whatever it is. That could absolutely happen too. So that's where all the bets are off. That's why I tried to tell everybody for so long, and some people understood it. Some of you understood it. Some people didn't. Some of the people from other fan bases especially didn't. But it's just about being on a part of the dance. And for Arkansas, and my expectation for this, because I already got asked about this, for Arkansas and giving me that expectation of, okay, so what could it be or what should it be? What do you expect them to do in the tournament? My thing is, if they win a game, I'll consider it all right, pretty good. I mean, if they lose to St. John's, say if they beat Kansas but beat St. John and lost to St. John's, and I'm not going to sit here and hang a banner and just be tickled pink, but I'm also going to say, hey, was a tough year at times. You got some things together. You won against a good Kansas team, a team that was reportedly better than you, And you just lost to a really good team in St. John's, especially since they're going to have like home court advantage up there, I feel like. But that's, to me, a solid showing. Now, if you lose to Kansas, I'm not going to throw a fit and say that this was crap, this was terrible, how dare. I mean, I'm not going to do that. It's just, this is a weird year. This is a weird year where you never know what you're going to get. You can sometimes get a team that goes out there and beats really good teams like they did in the SEC, and there'll be times that they completely and totally lay an egg. But what we do know about this Razorback team is that they have gotten better. Overall, generally speaking, they are a better basketball team than what they were a month ago. And the fact that they're better gives me a lot of good feelings. I mean, think about this, folks. The South Carolina game was trash. I mean, it sucked. It really did. But think about this. You lost to Alabama by 4 points. In that game, I mean, you lost to Oklahoma by 3. You lost to Alabama by 4. You lost to A&M on the road by 7. You lost to Auburn on the road by 7. The South Carolina game, you got smoked. But then you lost to Ole Miss by 3 on a buzzer beater when you had 6 players out there. That's it. You've won all the other games. So you have not been a disaster. You have not been trash. And you've done a lot of this with no healthy guys, dudes that are banged up, some of your best players being out, and you have found a way. You've refused to lose, and that is what gives me some confidence. That's what gives me some hope. But all of us need to understand this. It's the NCAA tournament. It is so hard to win in the NCAA tournament. I know Arkansas has been very blessed when it comes to their NCAA tournament appearances where they haven't had a big upset where they've gotten knocked off by a really low seed. I know the last 3 times that Arkansas has been in the NCAA tournament, they've won 8 games. You don't realize how hard that is to do. If you think that, just ask Kentucky fans. Just ask them. We'll see. But go in there, play your best, give it all. You can beat Kansas. You're completely capable of beating Kansas. Just do it. And give me something to be excited about. Give me a reason to stay up there in Rhode Island a little bit longer. Never into Providence, by the way. So if anybody has any suggestions, hit me up. Let me know. But I'm excited about it. It's tournament time. It's the best time of the year. Let's have some fun with it. But one of the biggest things in the stories, in the intrigue, is going to be a particular player coming back for Arkansas. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. So stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, eating healthy does not have to be complicated. With Factor, you can get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to eat and heat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without a hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week. You can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's calorie smart, protein plus, keto, whatever it is. I love how Factor keeps me on track, at least, when it comes to healthy and delicious meals without a time-consuming prep, because that's one of the things that you always have to do when it comes to trying to eat healthy is you try to prep. You try to put some things together. Sometimes it becomes difficult. Sometimes you try things that may not be good, but you don't have to worry about this. They offer it all. They also offer smoothies, breakfast, snacks, everything. So eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off free shipping on your first box. We're also brought to you by, of course, our friends at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for people in skilled trades. It's just Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading services, so you'll always be able to talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, Use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Razorback basketball, we know, have been dealing with injuries this year. That's no secret. It's pretty painfully obvious that they've had some issues there, and they're trying to overcome them and have been trying to overcome them. And I feel like they've done a pretty good job. But without question, Adu Thero and missing him has been a huge issue. He's such a great player and doing a lot of different things, and the fact that he's been out and looks to be doubtful, of course, to the latest reports of, I believe it's John Rothstein is the one that said it for Cal. Adu Thero is going to be doubtful for the NCAA tournament. But one player that had been out for a long time and originally was reported for the entire season was Boogie Fland. Well, looks like Boogie's back. They put out a statement. This would come from the University of Arkansas, where they said freshman guard Boogie Fland has been medically cleared to resume basketball activities and will begin practicing with the team immediately. This was on Saturday. Barring any setbacks, he's anticipated to be available to play in the NCAA tournament. Fland had successful surgery on January 22nd to repair an injury to his UCL on his right thumb. The injury occurred in Arkansas's game against Florida, and he attempted to play through the injury in the Razorbacks' next two games. I love how they put this note in here. It was against LSU and Missouri, but it says he scored 19 points in that game at LSU and dished out 11 assists with just 2 turnovers in the LSU and Missouri games combined. So basically saying, yeah, he played through injury, and look what he still did. Fland has missed the last 15 games. Prior to the injury, he started at the first 18 games of the season for the Razorbacks and was leading the SEC in minutes played per game. He led all NCAA freshmen in assist-to-turnover ratio at 3.68 and ranked 8th overall in the NCAA, first in the SEC in assist-to-turnover ratio. Yeah, he was killing it. He additionally led all NCAA freshmen in assists per game and ranked 29th overall in NCAA assists per game. Despite missing the last 15 games, Fland still ranks 15th in the SEC in total assists at 103. Isn't that insane? Like, he has not played in 15 games, and he's still a top 15 player in total assists. He averaged 15.1 points per game and led the team in scoring 6 times. He led the team in assists in 16 of his 18 games played. So, all in all, Boogie Fland's back. Now, some of you have, I'm sure, asked this question. Maybe you've asked it to me. Maybe you've asked it to Curtis. Maybe you've asked it to yourself or to your friends or whatever. But I've mentioned that Arkansas is playing their best basketball right now, and they've gotten better. Well, they've done that without Boogie Fland. And any time that you feel good about the direction the team is going, or you feel good about the current setup in place, you suddenly will get a little bit antsy and not feel totally great whenever there is a change, a player getting thrown into the mix. It's like, oh, is this going to impact the team in a negative way? Is it going to mess up the chemistry? Is it going to be a problem? Blah, blah, blah. And I understand that. I understand that take. I understand that approach. However, I feel like in most cases, and this one is a great example of it, you need bodies. And having a player like Boogie Fland back into the mix is not going to hurt this team. This team has been able to be successful and win despite the fact that they have had injuries and not a whole lot of bodies. Now you have a guy who can come in and help you alleviate a lot of that pressure, alleviate a lot of those issues, alleviate those tired legs. The guys like the Nelly Davises, the DJ Wagners, Billy Richmond having to play point guard, like all of that stuff, it can only help the team. It's not going to hurt them. It's going to help them. And I don't know what role we're going to see Boogie Fland in whenever this happens. Is he going to just walk right in and be the starter and average 36 minutes a game again? Probably not. Is he going to be a guy that comes off the bench? I would assume so. But how is he going to approach it? How is he going to handle it? Is he going to be somebody that fits right back in and feels good about where he's at and all of that? I trust Cal. I know a lot of people will snarl at that, but I trust Cal. And I have a hard time believing Cal would be bringing back a freshman like this just for funsies, like just because, why not? There's got to be some belief in him and belief that he can step in and really help out this team. And I think this is also another great time to say, I've said this previous years, and one of the biggest examples I had of this was Nick Smith. A lot of people were very critical of Nick Smith with the injuries and saying he only cared about the NBA and get to that next fact. And I was like, he came back. Y'all remember. Now, there was times it didn't look great, and it wasn't obviously the season that he wanted. But he came back. He didn't have to, but he did. And that should always be appreciated and respected regardless. You can criticize whether it was handled the right way or whatever, but he himself wanted to come back and play for the Razorbacks, and he did. This is another example of Boogie Fland. He could just shut her down. He could have said, nah, I'm good. He's going to be an NBA draft pick this year, folks. He's a one-and-done player. And I just don't see any reason to believe, like, for instance, would anybody have any issues if he just sat out? Would anybody even have to know? No, it'd be like, oh, he's out for the year. But he wants to come back. He is coming back, and he's going to do what he can to help the team. That deserves a lot of respect, and it has my respect. I appreciate him. He could have just moved on and not played for the Hogs and does not care, but he's staying. And again, that deserves a lot of respect and gets a lot of respect from me. It's going to be fun to see him. We'll talk a little bit of baseball. Arkansas baseball getting a series victory over Ole Miss. We'll do that in a second, so stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, folks, March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. I know that there's going to be a lot of people picking the Hogs, and maybe you think they're going to make a run at it. Well, hey, now's your chance to win some money on it. Now's your chance to have some fun with it. And FanDuel is the place to do it, especially when you're outside the state of Arkansas. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com. All right, final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Shout out to the Razorback baseball team. They got beat up pretty handedly against Ole Miss in Game 1. That was not fun. That was not fun to see, not fun to watch. But Arkansas was able to bounce back on Saturday and then beat the crap out of Ole Miss. So a slugfest happened, and then you had the rubber match yesterday. And Arkansas was down in this game. Didn't know what it was going to look like, didn't know how Arkansas was going to respond. But I say they responded pretty well as they got hit in the mouth early, and you had some really, really great plays by some really great players. I mean, big Aloy, dude. Behiva Aloy. 3 for 5, hit the go-ahead homer to put Arkansas up 12-9 in that game. They, I think, actually, yeah, because they were up 8-9. I'm trying to remember how it all went out. But anyway, he had that home run there in the 9th inning and really just added to the mix and added to the lead that Arkansas had already had because they had 8. That's right. And then he hit a home run to add 3 more. So he had a phenomenal showing yesterday. Logan Maxwell, he's really starting to come along too. Been really impressed by him. He also in this game had 3 hits. Cam Kojal had 2 hits. Yeah, Charles Davalon have 2 hits. So really good showing out of them, and the offense is starting to come around a little bit. And this was big because Ole Miss is a good team, folks. Like, don't get it twisted. This isn't the Ole Miss team of usual where they're a lot of bark and no bite. Like, they actually are a good baseball team. And so for Arkansas to get that in there and to take care of business is huge for them, and it's huge for what this team needed to start off in the SEC play, because I was worried. We saw them do really well in the non-conference and all that. It's like, great, but what does that mean? Does it have any legitimacy? Is it true? Is it something that we can look at and be like, oh yeah, this is how good this team is? Or was it just going up against some pretty lame opponents and everything? But just still great showings here, as you got like the Aloy's still batting over 400. Kahio Aloy is. Brent Iredale's fought 400. Big Aloy is getting up there. He's at 375. Cam Kojal's at 360. I mean, you're just starting to really get going, and I like the offense. I really do. I know it's hard to say and maybe a tough pill to swallow for a lot of you, but the offense has been bringing it. The pitching's got to get there a little bit more, man. Gabe Gackle has been struggling, but he settled in and did a lot better there in game 2. But Root was getting hurt and beat up pretty big. Not hurt like injury, but just he was not doing totally well there in that first game against Ole Miss. And Beidelshees comes out and he has some moments here. So they still got to figure out all the pitching and who's going to be the starter. I really wish that Gage Wood was playing, because I really liked the way that he was pitching, man. Hopefully they can get him back in. But Aiden Jimenez, that dude was great. He was great in the weekend. And so he's somebody that you really want to get going. You have so many options. You have so many talented players. It's just a matter, can you get the consistency out of them? Can you count on him to be like, this is the guy on this time, and that's that. So, so great showing. Always good to beat Ole Miss. Always good to beat them in an SEC series. And now you got to move on, and you got South Carolina coming to Fayetteville this weekend. So should be a great one to see. Appreciate all of you listening in and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Neighbors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel. Tomorrow afternoon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you then.